What's going on, everyone? Can everybody hear me okay? Oh, good. Okay, so we got a couple things set up here. So we have a small stream today, only 27 people, down from like 330 from last couple weeks ago. I don't know if there's something wrong with the tech or if just nobody cares about Arch Linux, but you guys came to see Arch Linux. We're gonna do it. Okay, so welcome to the stream. So this is a kind of a continuance of. Oh, if you have any questions, put it in the chat, and then they'll give that to me. The definitely Linux questions are best because we're focusing primarily on Linux lately. But I'll take any questions that you might have. So this is kind of a continuance on our focus on Linux as of late, in both Sunday videos as well as the streams for the past couple times. So the reason I wanted to do an Arch Linux video is because Arch Linux is it's very minimal, and not only is it very minimal, but they start you off with just a live CD and a base system, and then you have to bootstrap that system up to what you want it to do. And you got to install all the packages on your own. I mean, they do have a lot of packages, of course, but you got to know which ones you want to do. You got to install them, and then a lot of things they don't work out of the box like they would with some other operating systems. So the good thing about Arch Linux is that you get to really understand what building a Linux system from scratch is like, outside of like compiling your own kernel. Of course, you don't have to do that, but you do have to set up all the pieces of the system yourself. And we're going to do all that today, so it'll be fun. Is Arch a good distro for me? I think it depends on your skill level. Like, if you're a beginner, I don't know that I would advise it, only because you may just get frustrated with it, and then you may not want to use Linux at all. So to get familiar with Linux itself, I'd recommend maybe something simpler like a Ubuntu or like a Fedora. That'd probably be easier. But if you've been using Linux for any period of time, or if you're interested on how setting up Linux manually kind of works, then Arch Linux is a good option for that. And also, if you're a hardcore guy that just wants, you literally want the minimum that you can possibly get, and you want to build it all up, then Arch is another good option. We've been installing a desktop environment too, absolutely. So we're going to do the base system. We're going to configure everything about the system. We're going to do the disks, do the time zones, set the clock, set up grub, and then we're going to use LXDM, and we're going to install mate. That's going to be the two we're going to do. And at that point, that's going to be kind of the end of it. Please emphasize reading the manual. Yes, I will. What is the advantages? Yeah, we won't be doing i3. We're just going to do LXDM. That's the easiest one. And then I'm going to do mate as well. Okay, so let's get started. So the first thing you got to do is go get Arch Linux. So break out your browser. Oh, sorry. I need to get rid of the segments here. There we go. Whoops. I want that. So type in Arch Linux, archlinux.org. Zoom that up. So to get Arch Linux, go to download. Now you can get it one of a couple different ways. The ISO size is only 602 meg, which is quite small for a, well, it's quite small when you put it up against like the likes of Ubuntu or Fedora. So to get it, you can either get it through a torrent, or you can just download it directly from HTTP. That's what I'm going to do, just so I don't have to mess with the torrent. So you find yourself a mirror. I'm just going to pick a US one. So today I'm going to be putting Arch Linux on I'm gonna put it on VirtualBox because it'd be very difficult for me to show you on a physical computer. I'd have to like get a camera and record the the actual screen, so I don't want to do that. So you're gonna pick the ISO here. So I'm gonna click download on that. It's like 600 meg, so it should just take like 5 seconds for me. So that's done downloading. So if the process is the same, if you want to put it on a normal computer, you can do that. The next step would be to burn that ISO to a disk, or burn it to a DVD, or write it to a USB key. And I'm going to assume that you know how to do that because Arch Linux is difficult. I'm assuming you've used another Linux distro before this. If you don't, I have another stream that goes through that process. But once you have that on your disk and you put it into your computer to boot it up, now we're going to pick up from that point. So I'm just going to get to the point where I can start working with it. Just give me one moment here. Okay. So let's do Arch. Give it like 8 gig. Create a virtual disk. Do like 12 gig on the disk. If you're doing it in VirtualBox, once you set up your machine, it'll ask you what your startup disk is, and that is a little box right here. I'm sorry I can't make this bigger. I can't zoom this in. I will be able to zoom the actual VM in. So you can pick Arch Linux here, and then when you click start, it'll start booting it up. So I learned the other day I can set the scale factor to higher, so I can go to 200. There we go. I hope people can see this okay. I can't go over 200. It doesn't give me that option, so this is gonna have to work. So there's a couple different options here. One is going to be boot Arch Linux, and one's going to be boot existing OS. That's going to be good if you already have Arch Linux installed. What that's going to do is just look on the it's going to look for a boot partition, and then it's going to boot it up from there. So the first step is going to be to boot Arch Linux. Then it'll just take a moment to set up. Now, really what we're doing here is we're working with kind of the live, the live disk. And it's a full version of Arch Linux. It's just it's all in memory, and it's all from the disk. And then now we need to actually get it installed. So now Arch Linux has a good guide, has a good install guide, and it's on their website, but it's also all right here. If you do ls-l, you can see install.txt. And that contains really everything you need to know about installing Arch Linux, more or less. So you can follow that. Of course, it's not colorized, you can't resize it and whatnot, so I recommend using the web version, but they do provide the install.txt just so you can get going. So the first thing I look at is our disks. So I set up a 12 gigabyte thing I set up a 12 gigabyte disk, and to see that disk we can do fdisk-l, and this will show us a couple things. First thing it shows us is dev SDA 12 gig, and then disk model is VBox hard disk. If you were booting this up on your own computer, you would see whatever your hard drive currently looks like. And if it's blank, you would just see like 2 terabyte or 1 terabyte or whatever size your hard drive is. Now, I don't recommend trying this on, like, if you have Windows installed and you're going to try to dual boot by installing Arch Linux. I would maybe hold off on that because there's a high risk of destroying your Windows partitions and making it so. Yeah, thanks, Alex. That's actually right. Time date control set NTP true is actually the first step in the guide. So we got that all set now. And so I don't have to worry about that. Be very careful if you're, try to do this in a VM or try to do it on a computer you don't care about, because it's highly, there's there's a high chance that you're gonna break your whole system and Windows is not gonna boot up and you're gonna be sad. But if you know what you're doing, then you can do it. So we got to create partitions, and to do that we use the fdisk utility. So to modify the partitions of a disk, you can do fdisk, and then you specify the device. So for me, it's /dev/sda. So now we're here. We're in fdisk, and we can hit M for help. And this shows us a lot of different options that we can do with fdisk for making different partitions for our system. But we're not going to use all of these. We're going to use a few of them. One important thing you can do is you can type P and hit enter. And what that shows you is what's the current partitions on your disk. And of course it's empty because I have no partitions on my disk. So the first thing I need to do is create a new partition. I'm going to do 2 partitions. I'm not going to bother. Arch calls for 3, calls for swap space. I'm going to skip that. I'm just going to do a boot partition, and I'm going to do just the rest of the drive has the normal disk for the actual install. So to create a new partition, you can hit M, and you can see where it says N, add a new partition. So you do N. So it's going to say, what's your partition type, primary or extended? You're going to pick P for primary. And then it's going to do partition number 1 through 4. And, default's 1. So we'll just hit enter for the default. First sector is 2048. And then you have to set the end sector. Now this is our boot partition that we're going to do. And Arch calls for I think 260 to 5 something megabyte. So fdisk told us that one sector is 512 bytes. So if we want to make this 500 megabyte, we can do 512 million bytes divided by 512, and that gives us 1 million sectors. So we're going to start at 2048, and we're going to go up to 1 million 2048. And then the type is Linux, but we're going to have to change that. So remember I said P will show you all the partitions on your system, so you can click P now. You can see it says SDA1, not a boot disk, and it's from 2048 up to 1,000,2048, 488.3 meg. So we got to do 2 things to make this a bootable partition. The first, and again we hit M to see help, and you can see there's a flag. It's A. Toggle the bootable flag. Easy. A. Done. Since it's only one partition, it just automatically makes that the bootable partition. If you had a couple partitions, it would ask you to specify what number, so you would specify 1. And then finally we got to change the type. So you can see T is change a partition type. So I'll click T. It says selected partition 1, type L to list all codes. And this is all the different codes that you can set for a given partition. The one we're interested in is EF, which is EFI. So I'm going to type EF here, and that sets the partition type to EFI. And now I can click P again, so I can see my partition table. So now I have one partition, SDA1. It's a bootable partition. You can see it has the asterisk there, and then it's from, it's 1,000,001 sectors, type EFI, and the ID is EF. So that's it. We got one partition done. The second partition we got to do is just the rest of the space. We'll use ext4, and that's going to be just the normal storage for your install. So to do that, again, we're going to do N for new partition, another primary. Partition number is going to be 2 by default. That's what we need. Great. And then the first sector, it's going to pick the very first sector after the current partition. So you can see first sector is 1020.49. That's one after 1020.48. So we could just click enter there and then click enter. And then that's going to just pick the very next sector after the one it left off on, and it's going to go all the way to the end of the disk. So we can click P again. And now here's our partition table. Partition 1, boot partition, which is a type EFI. And then second partition is type Linux, which will just be like ext4, and it's 11.5 gigabytes. and that's our whole disk. So the last step to do here is to actually write the partition table to the drive, and we do that by, if we click M, you can see W, save and exit, write table to disk and exit. So that's what we'll do, W. It says the partition table has been altered, and that's that. So we can verify this change now by doing fdisk-L. Now we see something similar that we did before, except now it has two partitions on there, and we can see those in fdisk. So that's kind of helpful. So now we have two partitions, but they're not formatted the way we need them. So in Arch Linux and also in other distros, there's several families of commands called mkfs. There's a lot of them. There's exfat, ext2, 3, and 4. There's also xfs, vfat, ntfs, and so on. So the two we're interested in is vfat for our bootable partition and ext4 for our storage partition. So we'll do mkfs.vfat-f32, so fat32, and then we'll specify SDA1. So that formats that partition as vfat, and then the other one we're interested in is ext4 for dev SDA2. So now we have our partitions made. We have the partitions formatted the proper way. The next step is to actually, so we gotta mount these partitions now to our system. So what we'll do is go into /mnt. We can see there's nothing there. So we're going to mount SDA2. That's our big disk. And we're going to mount that to mount. And then next we got to do is make a folder inside that called boot. And then we're going to mount our boot partition to the boot folder. So we'll mount dev SDA1 to mount boot. Now we can actually see that here. So we have SDA2 mounted to mount, and then we have SDA1 mounted to mount boot. And the reason that works well is because this very next step, I'll start it. So the next step is packstrap. That's the command to basically write the base system to a mount point. So we'll do packstrap/mount and then base. So the reason it was mounted in this way is because by mounting one disk at mount and then one partition at mount and then mounting a second partition as a folder in that partition, we're allowing packstrap to write to a single folder, which in effect writes to two partitions, and that makes it easy to install. Yeah, we're actually gonna install YAY as well. So while this is installing, let me look in the chat here. So I'm seeing a couple of people don't like fdisk. There's other options. You don't have to use fdisk. It's just what I chose to use. Let's see. Console Discord and Arch from AUR. Yeah, so I don't use Arch. Like, I'm not an Arch guy. I'm doing this just because I know a lot of people do like Arch. I thought it'd be fun to do an Arch video where I install it, because this is one of the things that people have a hard time doing. There is, or at least my understanding is, there is a graphical option for Arch, but it's not offered up by the Arch people. They're not trying to offer a graphical version. But there's also install scripts. To my understanding, again, I'm not an Arch guy, and I prefer something simpler, just because this is already taking too much time. I want to just get to work. I want to get working, and so that's why I just pick something simple. But it's if you read my description in this video, it's for installing Arch Linux today because choices. in the in the Linux world, you have endless amounts of choices, and that goes for different distributions, that goes for kernel versions, that goes for package managers, that goes for init systems, that goes for the software that you download in Linux. And why not extend that to the way you install things? So yeah, there's no reason not to do this. Let's see. What is my normal internet speed? I have gigabit. That's why I was able to download that 600 megabyte file in about 5 seconds. Let's see. Yeah, so Alex brought up Manjaro. So I've actually tried that. My understanding of Manjaro is that it's built on Arch, but it installs a lot like Ubuntu. So that's good. If you want an Arch system and you want to get it installed quick, then that's another option. Yeah, Kev wrote Packstrap base dev along with base is useful if you want build tools. That's absolutely correct. And you can actually do that you could do that in the same command. You can do packstrap/mount space base dash devil. So that's a good suggestion. Thanks for that. Okay, so we're done. So we've used packstrap to put the base system onto the /mount point, which writes it to both partitions. It writes some of the stuff to boot, some of the stuff to mount. So what we need to do now is generate an fstab file. And there's a command we can use called gen fstab /u /mount, and then we're going to write that to /mount/etc/fstab. And then we're going to open that file so you can see what it just put in it. What this file is used for is once your system boots, it uses this file to know which partitions to mount, where to mount them, the options to mount them with, and then the order it should mount it in. So in this case, there's 2 entries. One is our root system. You can see it's, of course, my mouse, I can't highlight anything in here, but you can see the first option is dev sda2, and that's mounted at /ext4 read write. And then the boot partition is mounted to /boot to vfat, and you can see all the options that are in there. So seeing this file, I can confirm that it is in fact correct. Now gen fstab, you don't have to use that. That's in the Arch, install tutorial. But if you want to do this on your own, you can also get those UUIDs by doing ls block. Block ID. You can get those UUIDs from there too. So it's not like those are hidden from you. Those aren't just generated out of thin air. It's just pulling it from there. So a lot of these are just helper things. So once I have this generated, now it's time to basically chroot into our new system. Chroot, aka change root. So Arch has a command for that. It's arch-chroot, and then we're going to do /mount. So when I hit enter, you're going to see something happen here. You're going to see that the terminal kind of changed, and that's because our root used to be /mount, but by changing the root, our slash is now where /mount used to be, and we can see that with df-h. You can see that dev sda2 is now mounted on /, and so we're basically in our real system here, but we're still on, we're still using a portion of it on the actual ISO file that we download. And this is useful for a couple things. I'm actually going to intentionally screw up the install, that way it doesn't boot, so I can show you how you can recover a system with the live CD. I think that'll be an interesting exercise for us to do. So effectively we're in our new system now. Everything you do at this point is going to persist because this is your system. So the first thing to do is set the time zone. So right now it's set to UTC. It's saying it's 6:24 p.m., which of course it's not. It's 12:24. So the time zone information is located in user share zone info. So the way they call to do it is to use ln and make a symlink from user share zone info, And then for me, it's going to be America and then Chicago. And then that gets symlinked to Etsy local time. And then in doing so, you can see now I pick the date, and I'm now at 12:25 CST, which is where I actually live. So we're good there. So next is to generate the locale files, and that's going to be by opening up Etsy, I think locale.gen. And I'm interested in the ENUS one, which is English United States, and then UTF-8. So what I'll do is I'll uncomment that. I can then leave this file. And then I think it's locale.gen. Yeah, locale.gen. There it goes. So it's generating my locales. And that's for things like language and font rendering and various other things. I don't know the full list. And then now we need to set Etsy locale.conf. And I have a note here I'm going to read from my notes. It's an environment variable called lang for language, en_us.utf8. And then we'll leave that there. So next thing to do is set the host name. Right now the host name is archiso. So to set a host name, you edit etsy/hostname, and then you simply put your host name in here. So I'll call it, Brian Arch or emarch. emarch. So then the last thing to set up is your host file, which is at /etsy/hosts. The host file is what resolves different domain names and actual host names to IP addresses. So there's a couple things that you need in here. You need to map localhost to 127.0.1, and then you also need to map the name of your new host name. So I did emarch. And then that will resolve both of those to localhost. And that'll be helpful. So the last thing to do is set up not the last thing. So we need to set up a root password. So to do that, type passwd. And because you're already root, it's going to say, what's your new password? I'm just going to make it root. Retype password root. And then that's it. So now we have a root password. So now we're going to set up grub. And remember, I said I'm going to intentionally mess this step up. But remember, Arch is minimal, so you have to install grub because Arch is not dictating any particular, boot system. We're going to do grub. So their package manager is pacman, and that's --S grub. And that will install grub to my system so I can use it. So what I'll do now is I need to actually install all the grub stuff to the disk. So the command for that is grub-install /dev/sda. And remember, you're not providing a partition, you're providing the whole disk. It'll figure the rest out. And then, so now I'm good there. The last step is supposed to be making a grub configuration file. I'm going to intentionally not do that because it's going to cause the system to not boot, and then we're going to recover our system and we're going to pick up from where we left off. So now we're done. So now I'm going to type exit, and that's going to exit us from our change root environment. And then I'm going to just unmount mount/boot and mount. Now I'm going to type reboot to reboot the system. So now when the system comes back up, I want to pick boot existing OS because I've now installed Arch Linux on my system, and I want it to actually boot up, and I want to actually use it. So when I go to boot existing OS, I'm going to be met with this thing here, GNU grub. It's like, well, this isn't what I wanted. This isn't what I wanted. So I obviously did something wrong. And so if you've done something wrong like this, it's like, well, how do you fix it? Well, I'd really like a terminal. I'd really like a terminal to be able to do things. So this is where you can use a live disk to recover a system. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just reboot this machine. I don't know if I can do reboot here. Oh, I can. Good. So instead of boot existing OS, I'm going to boot back into the Arch Linux live disk. So I don't have to re-go through all the steps. Remember, I do have an Arch install, it's just slightly broken, and we're looking to recover it. So once I'm in here, the only thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to remount those two partitions. So I'm going to mount dev SDA2 to mount. I'm going to mount dev SDA1 to mount boot. I'm going to use Arch change root to mount, and then now I'm back in my system. Now I can just pick up where I left off. And the thing that I missed is grub-make config, and then output it to boot grub.cfg. So in running, and this would have been the command I would have ran after grub install. I just intentionally didn't do it so it would break. So now when I do it, it's going to set up the actual stuff within grub. That way it will see an actual thing it can boot from. So now that I've done that, I can go through the same process, exit, unmount, mount, boot, unmount, mount, and then just reboot. So now it's actually going to boot properly. So we're at this screen now, and we can go to boot existing OS. And here we go. It gives me this options, Arch Linux, advanced options for Arch Linux. So I'm going to pick just Arch Linux. It's going to load me up. And didn't take that long, right? I mean, it's quick, because there's nothing really on here. It's a super small kernel. We're already here. So we're going to log in, root. And then now we're in our system. And this looks a lot like what the true environment looked like, and that's because it basically is. It's just now we don't need the Arch disk anymore. We don't need that ISO file. We can pull the DVD out, the CD out, pull the USB stick out that had the install on it, and now we can actually start making our system. And the first thing we got to do is get ourselves some graphical interface. Well, actually, first thing I do is get internet. So ping Google, temporary failure name resolution. Now what? ifconfig. I know that.
On the website ibm.com.
Oh my goodness.
Temporary failure.
Damn, that scared me. Google Home. Don't do that to me. Give me a heart attack. Okay, so ifconfig. I know ifconfig, so I'll just type that. Oh, no command found. So I don't have internet. I don't have the command I need. Now what do? And remember, this is Arch. So ifconfig is on like every system ever except for Arch. What do? Well, there's other commands like ipadder. That'll show us that we have an EMP0S3 interface. That's going to be our network interface. And the thing we need to enable is DHCP CD. So Arch ships with systemd. So we're using systemctl enable DHCP CD. And then we'll start it. Now what that's going to do is that's going to enable our interface, and it's going to assign an IP address to it. So now I have an IP address 10.0.2.15. And I should have internet now. And I do. We're good to go. So when I did start DHCP CD, that actually started up that particular service. However, when I did enable, that makes it so it starts up when the system starts. So you gotta do both. If you want internet just one time, you can just do the start. If you want internet every single time your system boots up, which is of course probably what you want, then you can just enable it like that. So what we're going to need now is we need an actual graphical system. Like we want a desktop manager. I mean, we can use it like this. It's still a full Linux install. If you watch my last video, it still has all the stuff we need. We can still do useful things with it, but we came here for a sweet desktop manager. So to get something graphical, you need two things. There's desktop managers, and then there's desktop environments, DMs and DEs. So we need to install both. And we can do so through pacman. So pacman-s. First thing we need is xorg server. That's the actual X server, and that's the base. Then the thing on top of that is LXDM, And then the thing on top of that we're going to do is mate, and we're going to put mate extra as well. So mate is just one of the many desktop environments. There's also KDE, well, KDE/Plasma. There's also BusyBox, OpenBox, XFCE. There's GNOME, and probably hundreds of others. So I'm going to install just the defaults for everything. For this particular one, the libgl, you're going to have to pick the one that's best for your video card. I'm picking the default because it's just a VirtualBox. And then I'm going to eat up 1.5 gigabytes of Arch Linux bandwidth here. So, yeah, remember, Linux doesn't have to be graphical, and you learn that each time you log into like a cloud server. When you go into a cloud server, of course, you don't get a screen, you just get a terminal. And you could still be useful at the terminal, but if this is going to be your normal desktop, of course, you need to be able to see things. And everything is just built upon an install. So a desktop environment is nothing more than just another set of tools, another command that you run, and another piece of software that's installed that gives you a graphical environment. And what's cool about that is you can have multiple. You're not stuck to one. You can install XFCE, and actually, if we have time, we'll do it. And I'll show you that you can just toggle back between desktop environments. So you're not, don't think you're limited to one. All your files are still there. It's still a base system. You could have mate and XFCE, different desktops on each. They each do different things, but they both interact with the same core files and software that's part of your actual Arch install. So, why not? Okay, so I'm gonna look for some questions while this is running. Let's see. Went from Windows to Arch. Yeah, I mean, you can. If you were to install Arch as a dual boot, you would have to add these partitions alongside all your Windows stuff. And I don't mind saying that. I don't even know if I could do that. That might be somewhat confusing to me just because I don't have a great understanding on how Windows works, and therefore, I haven't purchased a Windows machine in probably like 8 years, and each time I see people's Windows machines, I always see different partitions, and I see hidden disks, and I don't know that I'm up to speed on the actual Windows part to really say for sure that I could even do that. Let's see, looking for questions. Is Elementary OS? I'm embarrassed to say that I've never installed Elementary OS, even though I've heard lots of people talk about it. So I'd have to check that out. What are your thoughts on Fedora? So Fedora, I like to think as the stable, I guess the rock, the rock of the Linux distros, but Fedora it's nothing else. You can install Fedora and then you can install XFCE, just like you did Arch. So it's really a lot of what it comes down to is which package manager do you want to use, because Arch uses Pacman and also YAY, whereas Ubuntu uses apt, whereas Fedora I think uses yum. I could be wrong about that. I know Red Hat and CentOS use yum, and I know it's downstream of Fedora. So let me Google that real quick. Okay, they use DNF, which is based on RPM. So it's still Red Hat package files. It's just through a different manager. So they all use RPMs. Yeah, DNF. I've only used Fedora a couple times. I've certainly never used it in any serious way. So Do I have any experience with Manjaro? I have actually installed it on a real machine just to try it out. And I, obviously, I installed it because I didn't want to go through. Remember, I'm all about getting to work. I'm all about doing things that are optimized for productivity and efficiency. So, and people kept saying, "Oh, you should try Arch. You should do this." And I was like, "You know what? I will. I will do that." And then I couldn't get it installed or whatever. So, they said, "Well, try Manjaro. That's basically Arch, but you don't have to go through all this." And I tried that, and I didn't like it. I guess that's just because I didn't really understand it, because I've been using Ubuntu my whole life. Okay, so now that this is installed, now that we're done here, the last thing I need to do is I need to create an actual user, because you don't want to log into a desktop environment as a root user. So to create a user, you can do user add -m -d to specify the home directory. So I'm going to do home/Brian, and then the user will be Brian. So that's good. I can set the password by using passwd, but instead of just passwd, I can do passwd Brian, and that will let me specify a password for that user. So I'll just do Brian. Now, the last thing I need to do is I need to start LXDM. I need to start the display manager. And as soon as I do this, I'm going to first enable it. That way it starts on boot. So when I run this next command, systemctl start LXDM, as soon as I run this, it's going to suddenly just appear out of nowhere, like poof, here we are. So this is the display manager, and you can see in the desktop section I have default and I have mate. And if I had other desktop environments installed, I would have other options here. So if I install XFCE, then I would be able to pick from XFCE at this point. So in this case, I'll pick mate, click my name, type Brian. And I think this takes a sec to get going. So let me read questions here. Can you give a tutorial on trooting? I think I'm going to cover that actually on its own in a Linux video, so be on the lookout for that. Yeah, so for Manjaro, it installed fine. Like, I had no problem installing it fine. It was just that I didn't really, like, I don't know, I've just been using Ubuntu my whole life. I had a hard time just getting a couple things running. So, okay, at this point, I need to get this thing still booting up here. I need to just make it really big so everybody can see it fine. So just give me a moment. So I'll set this to, we'll go 1920. Ooh, that's huge. Okay, hold on. Take that down to like 120. Uh-oh, lost it. There we go. Okay, so we're back. So we have our brand new thing here. Keep. Good. So this is it. We got mate. Mate's running. Wonderful. And then now we can customize it, do whatever we want to it. So, change your background. Because let's be honest, the only thing that really matters on a Linux system is the cool background, right? And it's got to look cool first. So, you can change that. You can change what other look and feel. And, we can give it super black, high contrast, whatever icons. This would be good for grandma. So this is our Arch system, and we could still open up a terminal. Of course, I don't have Xterm, so let me. Now, if you want to get back to an actual terminal, well, actually, part of the problem is my user doesn't have root, and so I can't even install it. If you want to get back to another terminal, you can do Control F2. That will bring you back to a thing. Let me just add, if you want to add a user to be a person that can do root things, then you can open up the etc sudoers file, type the user, all equals parentheses all. When I come back here, I also need to pacman xterm. I'm only doing this because in the desktop environment I have no way to be root, and now I do. So now I don't need to ever go back and do that. So from this point, oh, I think my system's broken. Hold on. Uh-oh, broke it. Okay, I'm just going to do a quick reboot. Oh, no, there it is. It's back. It's only on one core. I should have probably gave it more cores, but that's okay. Yeah, this thing's having a hard time right now. External RV. Okay. I'm just going to reboot this thing real quick. Yeah, hard reboot. There we go. Now, when I run the system, it should actually just boot up directly into the display manager because I enabled it on boot. So it should just be showing up. Hopefully I didn't brick it. I hope I didn't just brick my system. I might have. Oh, yes, Scott. I do. I am sitting in a new chair. It is not the red one. It is the Aeron Classic. So I'm good to go there now. And not a minute too soon because my other chair was completely destroyed. The arm started falling off and not good. Okay, so we're back here. We can log in. There we go. That's what I wanted. So now that we have a terminal, we can do whatever we want here. And when I do sudo-s, it asks me, oh, of course, you see sudo not found. Oops. See, Arch Linux is so light that you have to install sudo. So now I have root. And once I'm root, then I can install whatever else I want to install. So at this point, the only thing I'm going to do next is I'm going to install the YAY, and that's like imagine you want Google Chrome. I can't, and I wish I could make this bigger. I don't know if I can. Yeah, this thing doesn't want to get bigger. Mate terminal. Well, that's all jacked up. Sorry, I'm trying to make it so I can. I know people can't see this. It's way too small. How about Terminator? Nope. Okay, that's fine. We'll do it through we won't do it through the desktop environment just so I can make this larger and people can see what I'm doing. No big deal. Okay, so to install YAY, we need to first install Git, and then we're going to clone the YAY repo, and then we're just going to use make package to actually make it. So I will first do pacman-s git, so that'll give us Git. Yeah, I went to mate terminal, but all the text was all smushed and nasty. I don't know why that was, but so I'm gonna do git clone https AUR dot, I have this written down here, archlinux.org/yy.git. I'm actually gonna move that to my home directory. Okay. So then I have a package build file here, and then to build that I do make pkg-si. You not have write permissions. Okay then. Okay, it's because I downloaded it as root and I moved it over and it was still root. So make package-si, and it should go forth and cannot find. So I think I need base devil. I think that was the problem. So pacman-s base devil. This is what I should have installed in the beginning. This was I think Kev mentioned it, where you need base devil for a lot of things, and this is one of those things that I need it for. So I'll have to just give this a second. But what AUR is I think AUR is the Arch user repo. So like if I want Google Chrome, for instance, there's some software that's not available just directly through Pacman. So Google Chrome is one of those examples. You can get Firefox through Pacman, but you can't get Google Chrome. So, but it is available in with YAY through the AUR. And then that's what that's why that's useful. So once I have YAY installed, I can just do, instead of Pacman, I can do YAY-S, and then I can do Google Chrome, and that should hook me up. So I'll go back in as Brian, YAY, make package-si, and there it goes. Type my password. Let's go install some stuff. Yeah, yogurt. It's like I think it's Yowert, but everybody. I read one guy aliased it to yogurt because every time he wants to type Yowert, he ends up typing yogurt. So he just made an alias. But yeah, YAY is yet another Yowert / yogurt / whatever. Let's see here. Do you plan to make intermediate C the good enough? Do you have any experience with Manjaro tiling? Have you ever used a tiling WM, not a DE? So I'm not actually sure what that is. So I guess not. You should give me an example of a tiling WM so I can check that out. It's possible I have used it and I don't know it by that name. So you should let me know about that. Okay, so now I have YAY. So now I can do YAY-S Google Chrome. So I'll do 1 Google Chrome. If I wanted the beta or dev version, I could do that. Now the one note about YAY is it's stuff that's not supported by Arch, or at least that's my understanding of it. So you should, you got to kind of pay attention to what you're downloading. Pack hour, yeah. Keep in mind, like, this is probably my 4th time ever using Arch. So definitely, if you have any suggestions on what people should check out, possible people that want to use Arch Linux, definitely post them in Discord. so people know. There's a Linux channel there now, which gets used all the time, so you can put your comments. Excuse me, put your comments there. That'll be helpful to people who want to know more. Okay, I don't know why this is taking so long. Anyways, we're not going to wait for this to finish. Either there's something wrong with my internet or something wrong with the source, because this is going to take like another 10 minutes. So we're not going to worry about that. But once this finished, once this was done, then you could, oh geez, that's huge. Once that finishes, you would be able to come to Applications, Internet, and then there would be Google Chrome here. You would click it, and it would open up, and then you would suddenly have Chrome, and that would be the kind of the end of that. Yeah, it wasn't building. It's still downloading, and I think there's something wrong with the source, because I don't know why it would be downloading at like 100K a second. It's not my internet. All right, well, we got about 4 minutes left. I'm just gonna look for any last hanging questions here. Look through the chat. I mean, I'm sure Arch is good. Bill says Arch good for productivity. I'm sure it's good for productivity as long as you can get it running. Once you get it running, once you get it set up, once you get Arch running and you get your browser and you get your editor and you get all the tools that you're used to, then I don't see why it couldn't be productive. No reason not to. Let's see. We eventually do a video stream working with machine learning. Probably in the future. That's not, I don't mind admitting that's not my strong suit, but I, check out Cent Dex. He has nice videos on machine learning. Pack your. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. All right, so that's the end of the stream. I'm going to make notes on everything I did on all the steps I took, and then I will publish them in the Git repo for Engineer Man sometime in the next probably half hour. So if you feel like you want to try to install it, then you can use my steps. It's fairly easy. It should work fine in VirtualBox, and it should work fine on a plain vanilla system. So the last thing I want to mention is that if you're not on the Engineer Man Discord server, you should certainly go there. There's all kinds of great conversation that's happening, and especially if you guys are Arch professionals and you know a lot, you probably know more about Arch than I do, just because I haven't used it that much. I mean, certainly head over to Discord and post it in the Linux channel. So the URL to get there is engineerman.org/discord or discord.gg/engineerman. And I will post that here. So that link should get you to where you need to be. Let me know if that didn't work. What the heck? Okay, so that's good. All right, thanks for everybody showing up to the stream. Hopefully you learned something. Arch is, I guess it's not that hard. I always say it's very hard to install, but it just requires, some understanding of the system at a slightly lower level than just, my machine has a desktop environment and I use it through that. So, once you have the understanding on how the innards work, then Arch is not too bad. And of course you have Manjaro if you want to just get moving. That's just burn the ISO, drop it in, continue through a bunch of prompts, and then poof, you have an Arch type install. So yeah, you're welcome, Humbird. Thanks for showing up, and thanks for everybody putting in the notes for some of this. It's always good to get new notes, so certainly put them in Discord as well. And I hope everybody has a fantastic rest of their weekend. There's a video coming out tomorrow morning that is related to Linux. I won't give away the exact title, but it's going to be a good one. You'll love it if you love Linux. Other than that, I will see you on the stream 2 weeks from now, Saturday, noon. I'll see you there. Have a good one.